Who comes first, me or our kids?
The conversation stemmed from Twitter, of course, where people were trying to discuss who comes first in a familial structure. So whether it should be your spouse or if it should be your kids.
Yeah, and the woman in the tweet said that her husband comes first.
Right, and it's the debate. So, you want to give your opinion first?
Yeah, I'll give my quick opinion.
Go ahead.
So, I want to first say that the whole basis of who comes first actually comes from religion and biblical. So I just find it funny how a lot of people disagree with this standpoint, but are super religious. They'll have Bible verse in their bio, they'll have a cross, but then they're the same people like mad about people's stance when that's literally a biblical thing. Secondly, I feel like people are so quick to be angered by things that they don't realize what that actually means. So they interpret putting a man first. We also have to think a lot of these people aren't used to seeing stability. They aren't used to seeing loving, stable relationships. They're not having that on their own. So they don't know what it's like to have a nurturing, providing husband that you love and that you will care for. So that's one thing we gotta remember. But yeah, so they don't understand that aspect. But like I said, I feel like a lot of people don't understand what that means by saying your husband comes first or your wife comes first. They view that as, they equate that to that means you're neglecting the children. That's not what that means. It just means, somebody had a perfect breakdown. I'm gonna find it real quick while you're talking so I could kind of circle back with the list. But somebody had like a great list of what they mean. And one thing they meant by that is like how your man is supposed to eat first. That doesn't mean you over there slaving away, whipping up your man a meal, and then you start cooking for your kids. No, that means you cook the meals for the whole family at once, and you're putting everybody's food on the plate. If you this is for people who follow traditional husband-wife roles, right? Mm-hmm. Where a wife is serving the family, which is funny that people are against that, but they're not against the man paying the bills, which is still old traditional male role, right? So it's funny to me how they're so for that traditional role, but they're so anti the woman traditional part in it. But if you are in a traditional household where the wife is cooking for the family, right? Mm-hmm. What they mean, like one of the examples is you cooking everybody's food, but as you're handing out the food in the table, you give the husband his plate, you give your kids the plate. The kids are getting their plate 2 seconds after the husband. It's not like the kids are not eating. No. But it's like you're showing like a sign to your husband, like you're still the man in the household. This is like, I still love you. You're still my person. You're still my number one. You get your food first. Not that the kids don't matter. And people are saying, yeah, you shouldn't rank people. And like, I'm not like, I don't think people, it's necessarily a rank. It's just an emphasis on don't neglect your, people who believe in God, everything, your godly duty. Like when people get married, lots of people are doing it under God. So don't neglect the thing that you vowed to do, your wifely duties. Mm-hmm. So it's like you vowed your life to your husband. Like you're supposed to be one. When you get married, you're one. So he comes first, or your wife comes first. Then the kids. Your kids are gonna grow up and leave you and start their own families. Where they're gonna put their families before you, which they should. Mm-hmm. So it's like so much people spend so much time neglecting their husbands. Their kids. They make their kids everything. And then once those kids grow up and leave, then they're sitting there with a man or a woman that they feel like they don't even know or love anymore. And it's like, and then what happens? A lot of people get divorced around that time. So no. I agree. I think your spouse comes before your kids. And I don't mean it like, if it's just a fire and it's like, oh, who to save? Like that's such a drastic example. I feel like you try to save everybody as much as you can, but I just feel like, you make that a vow to your person. So don't forget that. Like, that's your person.
Yeah. I agree.
While you're talking, I'm going to find that list. Yeah. With other examples.
It's probably just, I probably pulled it up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. I think that in a family, you should choose your spouse first because just from a basic, simple concept, the spouse was there first, right? Like there was no concept of a child before your spouse. Yeah. So when you were making that commitment to that person, you're not making a commitment to kids that don't exist. Maybe you might want kids, but you're not committed to something that doesn't exist. You're not always guaranteed to have kids either.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like you make that commitment to your spouse and they should always come first, right? Like if you're on, I mean, I know it's a tough conversation and people might not necessarily want to hear it, but if you're in an emergency room table and they're asking you a question, do you want to save your wife or do you want to save the kid during a childbirth? I'm picking the wife. Like I don't, I know you. I don't know these kids that don't exist yet.
Yeah.
And so my loyalty is to you and my loyalty is also to the kid. But when it comes to my priorities, I known you. I will know you always, forever, longer than I've known these children. They weren't a concept when we met. So it's not like you said, it's important to say that they're not going to be disregarded.
Yeah.
But when it comes to my priorities, it's everybody, but it's you. Like you're the matriarch. You're the person that's at the head of the household, and that's
like
why
you started this.
Right, you created this whole life that we're existing
here.
in. Right, these children would not be here. So it would be actually irresponsible, in my opinion, to put the value of a child over the parent, because the parent is the one that has the power and the ability to have influence and can have stability and money and resources. All of that comes from them, not the children. So it would be a bad decision to put the child over the parent. That's like you would put the prince over the king. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The king is the one that is running this kingdom, not the prince, not the children, not anybody underneath. You'll be very irresponsible to view it that way. So to me, when it comes to a list of priorities, which I'm sure you'll read out in a second, the priority should always be the spouse, and that goes for the husband side and the wife side. Like that's just how it should work, and I think that that's kind of common sense. Now, like you said, it could be a little dramatic when people are talking about who to save in a fire and all that kind of stuff. Like, obviously a baby is going to be helpless. Like, you should go for the baby.
Yeah.
Though we're talking about in general, like when people were getting food served, in terms of who should be inconvenienced for some sort of issue, it shouldn't be put on the parent.
Yeah.
The parent shouldn't necessarily be inconvenienced when it comes to certain things. It should be the kid. The kid it's the child. They don't require as much, first of all.
Yeah.
And they're also, not that they're not important, but they're not as important, because as a parent, you're the resource. So you're more important.
Keeping the house afloat.
If your well-being isn't being taken care of, how the hell are you going to take care of the kid?
Yeah.
So that's really what it comes down to, in my opinion. So I don't know how people are prioritizing a kid over their spouse. And I know we've had this concept a lot. People hate their spouses.
Yeah, and we talked about this, about how like a lot of times kids change dynamics of relationships and marriages, because especially like, no offense, I'm a woman, but I'll admit like women are the main ones that do that, because they just have that like subconscious, it's like what's the word, like innate.
Yeah, that innate. Like, I'm a mom. Like it's that.
Like
that maternal instinct.
Yeah, that maternal instinct. Yeah, it's like it just comes with it, because you grew this baby, right? You grew this baby in your stomach, so it's like you just have this maternal instinct, right? So I think like I get it, but I feel like a lot of times some women, like, they become so over like compensated. Is that the right word? Over indulged, I guess, like in their role and their responsibility, that they end up neglecting their husbands. And I feel like the ones that do that, maybe like they really did love their husbands, and it just happens by accident. But I feel like maybe some of them didn't truly. And I feel like, we talked about this plenty of times on the podcast, where people get married and because they just want to check that box. Oh, I'm married, I have a kid. So they'll do it with anybody just to say they did it, and just to have that kid, and just to have that. And I think that happens more likely with them. But I think definitely even in marriages and relationships where there was no issues could arise, because they just become so indulged in that mom life, and that becomes their whole identity, is being a mom, and they end up really just neglecting a husband. And people are like, oh, woe is me about the husband, but like, nah, that's still a real person who has emotions, feelings, and love for their wife. Right. And like they feel like they're on the back burner now, beyond providing the needs for the kid. Like, it's like, obviously the kids are going to come first, and there's going to be stages of your life where the kids first, when they're a newborn, when they need you. But it's when it becomes beyond that, where their moms are so overly obsessive in their role. Like, the needs are met. Like, you're doing a lot now. Like, you still have a husband. You still have a person who still needs you also. Needs your affection, needs your love. And then unfortunately, that's what happens outside. A lot of times we see infidelity. Right. Not excusing it, but that's a very, reasonable link to why it happens.
And that goes into a whole other conversation, which I'll probably save for a later time, but it's the misconception that men cheat for frivolous reasons, just like the physical part. But a lot of it, and I think I gave you the number, I think I would assume it's like 90%, if not higher, is like an emotional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just from what I've seen personally. It's like I'm at work, I see women bash their husbands at a million miles an hour. So I can
Mm-hmm.
only imagine what they do in private. Like if you're doing this publicly in front of people, and this is
And
not
like
to give any excuses,
demeaning them.
demeaning them to your coworkers of
Yeah,
all people. It's not
that's
even like we're friends.
yeah. So like you said, that's how you know it probably gets nasty behind the scenes, like
so
talking to them like a child,
so like
like
when
their
it
own
comes
husbands.
to the emotional aspect, but that's a whole other conversation. And I'm not condoning cheating at all. Not that would never. But actions do have consequences, and unfortunately, that's just one of the consequences. But we'll save that conversation for another time.
Yeah,
But yeah. So, child does not ever come first.
yeah,
Never.
and that's like people view it like it's so harsh.
Yeah.
But
No.
that's why like this thing, like I was mentioning the article, it breaks it down good because they even said like was saying like it's controversial for people to believe this because she far too often moms put their children above their spouses and it ends up weighing on the marriage, which we just said. And so when I say your spouse should become before your child, I'm not saying your child's needs will go unmet. There will be a specific season when a child comes first and takes most if not all your time, like we just said. When our children are infants, they require a lot of time and energy. So that's expected in those early stages, right? When our kids are sick, again, they become a priority, but they shouldn't stay a priority. That's what she was saying. And she's like, should your spouse be your first priority? And she was saying, putting your spouse first does not mean you love your husband more than the kids. The love for a spouse and the love for our kids are different. There's enough room in our hearts for everybody, for the love of everybody. And she was saying putting your spouse first does not mean that your kids get less time. You can still prioritize your marriage while most of your time is spent taking care of the kids. Lastly, putting your spouse first does not mean neglecting your kids or allowing abuse of any kind. So, like, kids are always taken care of, they're always comforted, snuggled, and loved. Like, needs are still met. So, that's the thing, people act like that's what this means. So she was saying this is what she means. Here's 20 things that she was saying. One, she was saying, like, when you have nap time, like when the kids are napping, use that as like your me time. So go get whatever done that you needed to get done. Maybe any errands, maybe take your own nap, maybe go do whatever you want to do, right? But then once the kids go to bed at night, that's the time you spend with your husband. So have some time for like don't have like some women they'll use that time when the kids are in bed. That's their me time, and then they leave no space for when they actually are hanging out with their husband. So like when are you doing that? Using both your nap time and your bedtime as me time. It's like what about me? Like place boundaries on your kids' activities. So there's breathing room to enjoy with your spouse. So I guess like if your kids are doing stuff like just have boundaries. So there's some breathing room. So like if I said serve your spouse first at mealtime. This was an example of why I feel like my parents' relationships kind of fell apart. Like I just said, like the kids get older and move out, and then the marriage falls apart. Go figure. This is something I feel like they violated. Rule number 4, when she said, when your children tries to pit you against your spouse, pick your spouse's child. So when your dad says no more snacks, don't let them have snacks. If you disagree, just talk to your spouse. My parents were not like that. They were not a united front. Like you could tell they had different views on discipline. So my mom would hit us, and my dad wasn't really a big hitting person. So he would literally comfort us. And for us, it's like I get it. He was just comforting us, but for us, it was like confusing because it's almost like it was like we would take his side because like he doesn't hit us. But then now you're kind of causing beef because now it's like they didn't come up with a discipline like same page. You know what I mean? So like this, and that was a good example too. Like if like let's say our kids are like, oh, I want snacks, and you said no snacks, and then they come to me, mommy, I want snacks, and it's like, okay, you have snacks. That's not good. Why are we not on the same page? We play be united front always. If we disagree, we do that in private. So that's what that means by pitting your kids, like pitting us first. Like people view it so wrong, right? But this is like that's a good example. And the whole bunch of other stuff, like place boundaries so the kids don't interrupt the conversation. So me and you are talking, and the kids try to interrupt us. If it's not a dire need, they shouldn't be interrupting us. That's rude, listen to your preferences about like your care. So I think that goes both ways. Like hear each other out. It's just stuff like if he's busy at work, pack his lunch, make him coffee in the morning, like little stuff. Show displays of affection, text with him and flirt throughout the day, so you're not like this neglecting being a wife. Make your bedroom a no kid zone. Like if that's what you want it to be, right? Make sure you're saying I love you to the front of the kids. never leave without a kiss or a goodbye. Like, make sure that, cause sometimes you're probably busy with the kids running around, but still make that a priority. They give you a kiss before you leave the house. Like these are the things that this makes sense. These are the little stuff I feel like people don't do, and then their relationship falls apart. Last few says ask and value his opinion on matters of the home. Plan your weeks out. So plan maybe some meals to have together, any like dates. Devote time away without the kids. So vacations, dates. Prioritize date nights or day dates. So same thing. If meal times together are impossible, sit down while he eats his dinner. So if you're coming home late, like let's say like this, and this is more so for traditional households. You come home late and dinner time's over as a family and then you're eating. Still sit with you and talk to you, ask about your day. Care, show interest in his dreams, passions, and career, and pray for him. So this is very like religions based, but those make sense, right? Here you go. Like none of that says neglect your kids. I think that's how I interpreted it. By putting your spouse first. That's like was pretty spot on with how I interpreted what that means. But people think it means being a pick me and prioritizing men. Like a lot of women are just so messed up. Like they see like taking care of the family man and being traditional as like a weakness and being a pick me. Like it's crazy, but you can't blame them. They weren't raised in healthy homes and around loving marriages. So yeah, I know that was pretty long drawn out, but that was.
Thank you for that.
That list was good though. I was like, this is exactly what I was thinking. This is how I interpret it. Like nowhere in that was like, oh, let the kids starve and only feed your husband. The kids are crying. No, you need to have sex. Like no, let them cry. No, that's not what that means. These people are just a little slow. Mm-hmm. So I hate it because people don't ever have any introspection with topics. They're so quick to be like, oh my God, I'm tired of Black people and these topics. But there's never any introspection and any deeper dive into what it actually means and understanding of what it means. But hey, you gotta let people lead to their own demise. Like we see it time after time after time. Like it's a repeating trend over generation. Every generation, this continues to happen. And it's gonna keep happening. The husbands are gonna feel neglected and they're gonna go cheat. And it's just going to be divorce, broken home. It's going to be the same cycle because nobody wants to fix it. But I feel like it does start with people have to actually really love each other and like each other before the babies come in the first place. And discuss things before the kids. Like we should be on the same page about discipline before the kids are even here. You know what I mean? So, which we're already on the same page about, right? I'm not hitting them. None of that. I'm not doing that. So, yeah.
Oh.